Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 86th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this video, I'd like to talk about the concepts of entropy and syntropy. I've just watched a documentary that I'll put in the description from, an institute in Princeton that is doing research on consciousness. And of course, it arrives to the typical conclusion that consciousness is not in the brain. And they do plenty of really interesting research on the scientific level to sort of explore this with scientific experiments. So, spirituality, but in a very scientific kind of way of exploring it. And there's this idea, they published a book about the concept of entropy, which, of course, is this force which decomposes things, eventually going into chaos, where complexity increases and then eventually, things go into chaos. And then syntropy, kind of force that brings coherence and things together. And they're talking about the future as like this energy of this syntropy, this concept of syntropy as something coming from the future that exerts a point of attraction on the present to reach a kind of level of harmony which allows for, diversity and stability, like, the world of biology that we live in. And while watching this, I really had to actually revise some of these ideas that I had, because I came to understand that it's the opposite. And if you've been following my videos, I've sort of already hinted to it without even knowing. But now it's really much more clear, and I need to revise one of the things. So, one of the ideas that I had is that the future exerted a form of attraction on the past. Well, past, quote unquote, present. It's really hard to talk in past, present, and future when we're talking about something without time. But let's just use those terms. As a matter of fact, in the previous videos, if you watched it, what I say is that basically nothing, nothingness, that our consciousness, basically, wherever we are, is a blend between nothing or zero and everything or infinity. And basically, those, like, our consciousness is the result of the mixing of those two essential, or, how should I say, like basic consciousnesses, the two elementary forms of consciousness. One where you're conscious of being nothing, and one where you're conscious of being everything at the same time. Omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience, everything. But when I draw this, I don't draw this. I actually draw arrows that are pointing towards the subject. And then, of course, they sort of intermix in a form of a spiral. At least that's how I see it. And then you have a sort of reality here that emerges out of that. But what's interesting is if you have a pull kind of force, that would actually rip reality apart. But if you have a push force on both sides, that's how you can get density. And everybody's saying, in the spiritual circles, that this reality is the densest, very dense, 3D, dense reality. And we experience it every day. Like your sofa is very hard, and I mean soft, but relatively, and your floor is hard, and metal is hard, and you bump your head around, and I mean it's dense. And that's the only way that you can get density, if you have two forces that are actually opposed and that are crushing something in the middle. Whereas if you have two forces that are trying to attract something in the middle and attract it towards them, then it rips reality apart. And the idea here is that, why do you have that kind of movement? It's that these two quintessential forms of consciousnesses want to experience that which they are not, because that is what's most interesting. Why would they want to attract you, for instance, from your present to become nothingness. There's nothing interesting from the point of view of nothingness to attract something into being nothing. What it is interested in is to experience that which it is not, because that is the greatest mystery or adventure or something that is really interesting from its point of view. And the same for omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience. What's interesting from the point of view of everything is to experience limitations and not knowing everything. That is what's really interesting. And so it exerts pressure on the opposite direction. And so, what's really interesting about this is that actually there are no points of attraction from the future. What there are is timelines that exist, of course, and they don't exert an attraction. What you may think they exert an attraction, but they don't. What the feeling of attraction is simply you projecting yourself into some of those timelines and getting a feedback in the form of feeling magnetic, whether that timeline is attractive to you or not, whether it is interesting, whether it's pleasant or not. You get that kind of feedback. But it's not that it actually attracts you, it's rather you're actually pushed in the back into these timelines. You're pushed into the future, and then it's really your choice to navigate these different potentials, and to manage this kind of push in the back. It's like a locomotive. You think about it as a locomotive, choo choo train, rather that is like pushed, and these are all like rails that you can ride on, with moments where you can split at a fork, certain key moments in your life, rather than something like you're actually pulled from the future. And that is absolutely key, because that means that our free will is much greater in a way, that the future is really very open in the end. And the only thing that we don't have a choice is this willingness from of nothingness, this power of nothingness, to push us in the back, because it wants to know more, it wants to become more. And that is what initiates change, the motor of change. And we have to manage basically the tendency of everything to try and decompose things. And of course, then you might say, oh, so nothing is positive and everything is negative, or, good, bad. But that's not at all how you should view this. It's more of it's just a very simple thing of trying to find out that which you are not. That's all. Experience that which you are not. And maybe it's about like almost negotiating with everything and saying, look, if you want to experience more of that which you are not, if you don't let us, for instance, as humanity, achieve a higher level of consciousness, then the experience will disappear altogether. Obviously, it's like, we are on this planet. There is climate change at our doorstep. It's like a baby that's in the womb at 9 months. Either it's born or it's aborted. And if it is born, then the experience continues, and you can have many more experiences that are much more complex. If it is aborted, then the experience finishes, and there's nothing more that you can experience. And so it's really about dosing those two forces, one coming from infinity and wanting to explore more limitations, more of separation, if you will, and one, well, it's not really separation, it's more going towards nothingness. And so it's more of this decomposition, limitations feel, and the one pushing us in the back from nothing, trying to become more and more everything and aware of everything. So that was a quite short video. I hope you enjoyed it. And talk to you in the next video. Feel free to leave comments, of course.